Computer. Here we go.
Excellent. So welcome everyone. It is a lovely day, and yes, I'm full of excitement, and thank you for your thumbs up. I trust all of you who want to have the jab are being invited along speedily, and your boosters, etc., etc. And as a result of that, many other things, the world's looking a pretty nice place. I went out yesterday. I was working on Zoom and working away and everything else. And I went out at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon for a quick breather, and the sky was absolutely stunning. If I'm clever enough at some break, I might put a photo up of the blue clouds. Sorry, that's the wrong way around, isn't it? Is it a blue sky we have with gorgeous white fluffy clouds, silver lining in every single one of them? It was absolutely stunning, and it allowed me to just take myself out of all the places I'd been.
I've just shared it on the group now.
Oh, have you? Yeah. Apart from a couple of people aren't on there, but it was sort of take your breath away, beautiful, particularly because my head had been down in other stuff, because I'd been engrossed in things and I'd been rushing around. So to go out and just find that space was absolutely marvellous. So I'm inviting you all now, because I'm guessing your lives are pretty busy still, that you've been rushing around, that you've already started your morning in some way, shape or form. And perhaps there's been a few emails or messages or to-do lists that are just sort of piling, or even just lots of stuff around, floating around. I'm just going to invite you to do whatever you can, whatever works for you, as you sit there and notice that you're here again in this environment, in this virtual environment, with all your co-learners. Just bring yourself to this space. Bring yourself to this space with all your capabilities, with all your skills, all your plans, all your strategies, all your ideas for how you can make the most of this time that you're investing in yourself and your development. You've chosen to spend time learning, expanding your skills, because it's important to you in some way. And perhaps just allow yourself to remind yourself what's important to you about being here and investing your time and enjoying the company of this lovely group of people that you're supporting and they're supporting you, that mutual network of support. And realise that with all this happening, it's all about supporting you in being that person you want to be. That person, that coach, that friend, whoever it is, that this whole development is helping and supporting you in achieving that and keeping you online and aligned with your purpose, whatever it is. So just a couple of breaths that allow everything else to go as you breathe out, like white clouds that drift along, or like petals on a river. Just let all the other things go as the blue sky clears. And you're in this place with whatever your intent is for the next while, because you'll learn best if you're relaxed and you're present, if you're having fun and if you're enjoying the company of each other. And we are all looking forward to, we bring that energy to that looking forward to in the present moment, just continuing to learn and build on what we've already learned. And today, and one of the things actually Kevin and I have been thinking about over the last few weeks, talking about this network and connection, the difference for us having the virtual connections on Zoom is quite a lot of difference, isn't it, Kevin?
Yeah.
And we're missing that opportunity for the, cup of coffee in the middle of a face-to-face break, or the chit chat that might just go with your sidelines and everything. And we were wondering how we can ensure we maintain that engagement and give you the opportunity to ask those questions that are sometimes just a bit offside in terms of the topics we're covering. So we want to offer everyone the opportunity to just have, 45 minutes, an hour's chat with Kevin or myself, just so that we can check how you're going. You can check and be a report in terms of how you're going. And that if you have any questions or further clarifications about what we've done or where the program's going, and if you have any feedback for us of how we can make things better, it's just that opportunity. And even if it's just a chat to say, how are you? How's it going? It'd be really nice for us if you want to take up that opportunity. And we've earmarked the week of the 3rd of May. Between Kevin and I, we're available on different days. But we just wanted to, what we'll do is send out an email and just invite people, if you want a slot, here are the available slots, first come, first serve sort of thing. So I hope that will just help. There might be things, that sometimes just don't fit in terms of the question and answer sessions, the tiny space we allow for those on the call. So if there's anything that's, back in the back of the mind, or something that's you just haven't quite got, it'll be an opportunity just to work through that a little bit more with one or other of us. So we'll give you information on that. I trust you think that's a nice idea and that you'll be looking forward to it as much as we are. So that's just so that if there's any questions, even in today's session that needs more, have your little icebox to the side so that you can note them and we can cover those off. Because again, we have a fabulous full-on, what do I call it? Learning experience for you. So we kick off, as we always do, with a little review of what's been going on since we last met in this forum. So Kevin, you were just going to remind us about all that.
Yeah, we've done, we packed so much in, I think, last time and on the online. What we started to look at last time was this pyramid, this logical levels, the neurological levels of development, as it's called, which hopefully you're all familiar with now. There was a little bit of follow-up online with that, which hopefully was helpful in kind of cementing the learning for you as well. And then we started to look at how you can populate the content of your own pyramid. And one thing to keep in mind is, as a coach, one service that you can provide that is incredibly useful for your client, your coachee, is to help them populate a conscious awareness of what's in each of those levels. Because remember, with things like beliefs and values, we were highlighting the fact that a lot of the things that we believe about ourselves, maybe, about the way the universe works, and a lot of our values are within our unconscious, which means that we're not fully aware of them all of the time. So a great service that you can provide for your coachee is actually to help them have more self-awareness in terms of the content of each of those levels. The other thing that you can do is to help them become more aligned. In fact, we would say that that's probably your key role as a coach, is to help them get that alignment so that their behaviors, their capabilities are lining up with their beliefs and values, and they are being a true and congruent version of the person they want to be. And that's kind of the ultimate goal, if you like. So we started that process by showing you one method, one methodology, one process, which is the values elicitation technique with the prioritization. And we've seen some great examples of you doing that. I think we've still some to look at, still some to come in, but that's great. That's work in progress. We're delighted with what we've seen so far. What else have we done? We shared with you the last two sets of presuppositions. There may be more, but that's the kind of standard set that we're focusing on this program. And finally, I think we shared a module with you because we're moving today into the topic of language. So we shared a little module with you in terms of the power of questions. And obviously that's one of the key techniques that you have as a coach. And we're going to be exploring that over the coming weeks. So with that in mind, does anybody want to share any observations or any questions that it would be useful for the rest of the group to hear? Either around logical levels or the values activity? Anything that it would be worth sharing with the group now? Joe?
Just an observation really about the values elicitation. You said in your email, Kevin, that we could enjoy ourselves. And actually, you were right to say it, because it really was enjoyable, both describing an ideal situation and hearing an ideal situation. It had a really enlivening effect on me. I did it with 2 different people, and it's a tonic, you know. I should have been, if this was a paying situation, I could almost have been happy to pay for it. It was that enjoyable.
Was that you as a coach, Joe, or was that you being coached, or both?
Sorry, you've gone a bit faint. I'm just going to turn you up.
Were those examples you being a coach or being coached, or both?
Being both were enjoyable, but being the coach was enjoyable because it was so infectious, really, the person's positivity.
Yeah, brilliant. It's great. I mean, and that's one of the things that we like about this style of coaching, that we are encouraging people to focus on the positive. You know, and we'll do more on that when we come and look at well-formed outcomes. But that's great to hear. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that.
And also, I suppose it was our first touch of state elicitation. What was happening, people were going into that state when you were asking them what they were feeling after they saw what they saw and heard what they heard. What they were feeling, that sort of eliciting that state is marvellous. Great. Anyone else? No, take that. Everyone's happy then. And moving on, I just had a couple of points, Kevin. I thought we said we'd share perhaps, just in terms of the exercise and the coaching session. And as Kevin said, really, really good. And everyone's finding their own way and their own feel of things. There were just a couple of points about the specific intervention we shared there I wanted to make. Well, and it's just because of the constraints of what we've had. Just wanted to remind people, there isn't a necessity for the client to actually see you playing with the post-it notes. All that's important is that they hear the words and you manage the process well, because it is a bit clumsy, you know, doing it that way. The reason I did it that way with Mark was so that you could see it. If it works, and you want to show it to the client, that's absolutely fine. But the client will have, as you've probably experienced, just go inside anyway. You know, you don't want their conscious mind too engaged with the process. You want them to be just going inside, working out, if I have that and don't have that, what will it be? What would I like? Which one would be best? And they're going inside. So they don't need to follow the process once you're managing it well. And if you go out of sequence, if it goes a bit wrong, that's absolutely fine. Every time you check back, this or that or this, the person's having to going inside again, and they're creating a much fuller, tangible realization for themselves as what they mean by this or that. So it's absolutely fine. So relax and enjoy the process as well. And then there was just one other point, and it was about that elicitation that we do at the end in terms of the 10 out of 10. It tends to be most useful to invite the person in the order of the VAC. See what you see, hear what you hear, and now feel the feelings. if you remember, there's different speeds of access. One of the reasons is the different speeds of access. We can do visuals very quickly. We're getting them into that place. We're helping them associate into that memory or that imaginary experience. We're wanting them to be as if it's now. So they're seeing what they saw, see what they see, hear what they're hearing. And then while they're seeing what they're seeing, hearing what they're hearing, invite them to sense the feelings. What are they feeling that lets them know that whatever it is a 10 out of 10. So it's just the most, it works out the tidiest and most efficient way of helping someone associate. We had a lovely example where it doesn't always stop at those three. You can ask them about olfactory and gustatory as well. For some people, that's an important bit to remember. Excellent. And that was it. And the lovely point that Joe's already made, enjoy the process, because there's that lightness and energy that comes across for both coach and coach.
And I think, Rita, the final bit, which is the what did you say to yourself, is the bit that kind of signs it all off. It's like kind of putting your signature on a letter almost, and it really grounds it. So yeah, that order is very important.
Yep, and again, we'll be using that again as we look at states and state awareness moving forward. So brilliant. So unless there's any other questions on that bit I shared, we're on to...
Yeah, so this is what we're going to be looking at today. So we're moving into the area of language. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at what language is and the relevance of language in NLP terms. And we're going to be developing on from the ideas around the map of the world that we did some time ago, which we'll remind you of in a moment. And then we're going to look at two specific areas of language which you can use in your coaching. One is the area of presuppositions. These are not the NLP presuppositions, by the way. They are more presuppositions in a more general sense. And then we're going to look at a technique called framing and reframing. So that's what we have in store for you today. Okay, so let's start to think about language then now. And one aspect of language is to think about, it's the one thing that really differentiates the human species from other species. Now, other species have their own form of communication, but there's no other species that has the richness of vocabulary, of language, where we can share things like concepts, for example. So we can have a discussion around the topic of values. You know, what does honor mean? What does trust mean? What does respect mean? We can have a dialogue around that, and we do that through language. Another important thing about language is, and this is kind of a double-edged sword that we're going to play around with, that language enhances our perception. In other words, the richer vocabulary we have, the more able we are to describe things, the more specific detail we can get into, the richer the picture that we can create for the other person. And we'll put some examples of this online, but we wanted to just pull out one example of this for today. So for example, there is a word in Spanish, and apologies for my pronunciation, it's called gula, and it's describing the desire to eat simply for the taste. Now, I'm not aware of any word or phrase that we have in English for that. Somebody may know that. That may say more about my command of the English language. But what's interesting about that is that, you know, it is a thing, as we say these days, you know, the desire to eat, I just want to eat this because I love the taste of it. But it's that thing that if you haven't got a word to describe it, it's very difficult to bring that into any conversation, for example. Yeah, so it enhances our ability to communicate, but it also limits our perception in that if a thing doesn't have a name, it's almost like, is it really there? And a good example for me of this is that for those of you who like to sort of venture up into the mountains, when there is a recognized peak or a summit, it has a name. But of course, all of the other peaks that are maybe just short of it or just a hill on the way to the summit, they don't have a name. So do they really exist in any kind of in any kind of way that we could have a dialogue about it? So it's this idea that language enhances and limits our perception. And the final thing to add at this stage is that why language is important is that it's an outside manifestation of what's going on the inside. So it's kind of at that behavioral level. It's what we hear of a person. And it's therefore an indicator of how a person is creating their model of the world. And that's an important distinction. It's not just what's in their model of the world, but it's also giving you some important clues as to how they have created the model of the world in the first place.
Okay, so we were just going to make that connection and remind you about that model of the world and how that's created. So I think, oh, I didn't share screen there. That was not used to this one, am I, Kevin? There we go. Are you seeing a screen now? You are.
Yeah.
So just a reminder that there's all this stuff happening out there, that it comes in pictures, sounds, feelings, smells and taste. It goes through our filters, and then we have the internal representation. We create that internal representation in visuals, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. We retain that information. It's gone through filters. It's retains some information, but in general, it has had the distortion. It's not in general. Specifically, there has been deletions, distortions, and generalizations that mean that what we have as our internal representation is a distortion of what we may have actually experienced out there, as it were. And what we're looking at is how language then interplays with this and where it fits in that map of the world concept.
So I'm going to share with you for a moment some of my internal representations, and to tell you about a trip that I took in 2003. And I was on holiday in America with my daughter, who was then 13, and we took a sort of driving trip from the West Coast, and we came inland. And then we went to a place that I've always wanted to visit. And what was amazing about this was that it was the end of a long day's drive, I think. We arrived sort of dusk, and we followed the signs to get there. And then we parked the car in a sort of ordinary looking car park. And then there was a sign leading out of the car park on a little track, and it said, "Walk this way." So we parked the car and we followed this little track and through the trees. And then all of a sudden came out of the trees, and there before me was the Grand Canyon. And it was just jaw-droppingly unbelievable. I'd seen photographs of it, films, documentaries, etc., but nothing prepared me for the scale of what I was witnessing. I just couldn't take it all in. It was just incredible. It took my breath away, and I was just staring into it, and mouth open, whatever cliches you want to add in there. It was just incredible. And we spent about 3 days there, sort of exploring roundabout, but nothing prepared me for what I saw on that day. And I can still get myself back there, not just I can see the pictures in my mind's eye that I saw at the time, but I'm also getting the feeling, maybe that's coming through, I don't know, but I'm getting the feeling of utter excitement and joy at seeing this for the first time. And I'm guessing that you will have had similar experiences in your life as well. And so what's interesting about that is that what am I doing there? Well, I'm accessing my internal representations, and those are stored away as pictures. I can't say there are any particular sounds associated with it. I think it was pretty quiet from memory. I can certainly associate back into the feelings. Smells and tastes, not sure I've got any of those stored away about that experience. And I'm sure I had an internal dialogue. But what's happening though is that I'm doing my best there to access my internal representations, which are a record, if you like, of what happened at the time. But we know, as Rita's just reminded us there have been deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So it's not an accurate representation of what actually happened, even though I may, try and convince myself it is. Now, let me, Rita, do you want to are you going to share screen? Because we're going to introduce the idea now of a second map. The first map, of course, which we've explored with you, is coded away in terms of pictures, sounds, etc. Yeah, and we can all dip into that map whenever we want. But there is what we call a secondary map.
Is that sharing, Kev?
Not yet.
Oh. Oh dear. Many apologies.
All right.
Let me try that again. Is that sharing?
Yes, yes it is. Yes it is. Yeah. Okay. So if the main map is full of pictures, sounds, feelings, etc., then what we also do is we create what we call a language map. Okay, so let's just move it on to the next one. So the first level map we've looked at, it has sensory representations and it's close to the experience itself, and it's what we refer to as being a deep structure map. In other words, there's a lot of detail in there. Now, what we then do is we create what we call a surface structure map, and the surface structure map is made up of language. Now, language, of course, what we're talking about here, if you think about language, we're using symbols to represent the experience. So when I talk about the fact that, it was, as I looked out there, it was breathtaking. Breathtaking is a symbol that has some kind of meaning. It has a meaning to me, it has a meaning to you, and there may be some correlation between those two meanings, but it's a symbolic representation of the thing itself. So even the words Grand Canyon, yeah, that's a symbolic representation of the actual Grand Canyon itself. So what we've moved away from here is me being present in the current moment, experiencing it. That's one thing. The second thing then is me storing away that memory in pictures, sounds, feelings, etc. And that's a watering down, if you like. And then the third one then is we create a language version of the experience that I've remembered. And a great example of this is that when you go away on holiday, you're experiencing it in the now. You come away and hopefully you remember lots of it. And then when you get back into your workplace or you meet up with friends or whatever, and they say, how was your holiday? And you say, it was great. You know, we did this, we did that, and the weather was this, and blah, blah, blah. And what you're doing is you have either already created that language map, or you are creating that language map as you are telling them for the first time. Now, when the second and third and fourth person says, how was your holiday? Sometimes you're not even going to your deep structure map. You're just referring to your surface structure map. Oh yeah, it was great. We had a great time. The food was good. The weather was great, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You haven't taken a deep dive into any of that information that you've stored away. Is this making sense to everyone? Yeah, good. Okay. And just pop that slide back up, Ree, because that was a good one to illustrate this as well. What tends to happen these days, and I'm sure you're the same as everybody else, really, that, you know, when we go away, we take hundreds and hundreds of photographs, and then we kind of weed them down, and we maybe have a, you know, top 100 photographs, and maybe we print them in a book, or maybe we share them on Facebook or whatever it is. Yeah. So it's kind of the same process here, that we are gradually sort of honing and funneling it down from the actual experience into something which is a linguistic version of what actually happened. So it's this concept of two maps, really. Have we got another slide after that? One about the two maps.
This one?
Yeah, let's just see if there's anything in there. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to be sharing with you a little bit later in the program, in fact, I think this is in part 2, Ree, isn't it?
It is, yes.
We're going to be sharing with you something called a meta model, which is a key part of NLP. And it's looking in a little bit more detail how the language map is created. And it's focusing again on this area of deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So that's just a little taster for what's coming. Today, though, we are introducing the concept of this language map. And we're going to share with you some things that you can do as a coach. Now, one thing to recognize is that when you are coaching someone and they come into the room and you begin that dialogue, a lot of the time, what they're doing is they're referring to their language map. Yeah. And the language map is even further removed from what happened at the time. So quite often you will be coaching somebody who is talking about, you know, a past event. And they are telling you about the past event. Yeah. Now that's not the past event. The past event is in the past, it's gone anyway. At best, they have a first level deep structure map of it with pictures and sounds, etc., which is totally inaccurate anyway. And then they've created a language map. So what they are doing is they are speaking. It's almost like they're speaking from the executive summary. And they're not even going into the pages of the book with the detail in. Yeah. So one of your key roles as a coach is to get them to take that deeper dive. Because what happens is, in the language map, it's full of all of these deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So, you know, and it's reflecting all of their filters and their values and their concerns and their worries. You know, I am not a very good person because of this thing that happened. They've made up all of these stories. Something that you know, we talk about quite a lot is that people come and they tell you stories, and they are only stories, but of course they believe in them. They believe they are the truth, and this is me, but it isn't. It's just a story. It's just a language version of something that's flawed anyway. So it's really important for you as a coach to get them to take this dive in and reconnect with the detail of what happened at the time.
And as a coach, of course, language is our main tool, really, for working out what's going on in a person's internal map of the world. It's the language they use, it's the way they express themselves, it's the stories they tell that allows us to look at the process they're using to create their map of the world, and perhaps bring their attention to the patterns, the strategies they've developed, the shortcuts they've been taking that aren't serving them well, and helping them discover and explore other choices that may serve them better. So language and listening in and listening out for the words, and pausing sometimes, noting verbatim what a client is saying can be incredibly useful. It's an amazing tool for us just to listen. Why listening is such a big skill. And I suppose it's worth just reflecting back that we're doing a neuro-linguistic programming course here. We're learning about neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of the initial work around NLP was understanding all the clues that are coming out when we speak, to help us understand how we're actually communicating with ourselves and with other people, and the underlying and perhaps the presuppositions that are in what we're saying and what we're hearing. And so today we're looking at those two aspects of language: presuppositions and framing. So let's just
a little warning on this one. These presuppositions and framing are absolutely fantastic, and again, you can put them into practice straight away. You'll find that you've already been using them to some extent in life anyway. When we get into presuppositions, which is this first bit, what you will find, some of you will love this and some of you will hate it. Because we're gonna turn you all into pedants for a few minutes. John, question.
As a magician, this stuff is fascinating, because we rely, if you design a magic routine well, you design it so that certain things will resonate with people, and when they describe it to someone else, they'll tell them something that you really didn't do, but it sounds amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
And the reason, and I think the reason that's relevant is, I think when someone tells us a story, I think the process happens in reverse, because our natural tendency is to fill in the gaps. So we're almost going down from the surface level, and we then get an emotional reaction, and then we decide we know what's happened. And I suppose as coaches, we have to try and resist assuming we know what's going on, because we're doing naturally doing that process in reverse.
That's a very good point. Absolutely right. So it is about going with the client's experience and going with the client's language, and holding back from making up your own stories about what the client's saying. Absolutely. Yeah. So and this will help when we get into presuppositions, but it's a very important area. As I say, some of you will love this because it's really getting into the detail. Others of you will think, oh my God, this is really doing my head in. But stick with it. And it may, the power of this may not become obvious to some of you straight away either. And it didn't to me, to be honest. When I first came across this many years ago, I said, oh God, this is laborious. But actually, there's a real power behind it. So we're going to work through some examples, and then we're going to get you to split up and do your own examples as well. So it's going to be very, very practical.
Okay, so let's just kick off by reminding ourselves what presupposition is. And basically we're talking about linguistic presuppositions. So we're talking about the assumptions that are sort of wrapped up in the language and phraseology we're using. And it's incredibly useful for recognizing what is assumed in someone's speech. So there'll be things deleted, distorted, and generalizations happening that we can do some rebuilding to work out what's actually going on there in a pattern. And I think John's experience is fascinating here in relation to that. It really does, we can't talk without having assumptions, presuppositions in what we're speaking about. To describe the simplest of things would take forever. So it's a natural way for us to be efficient in the way we talk, that we use language that builds on the presuppositions of what I believe to be true in the world. You know, which is deep, incredibly useful, and amazingly fascinating as we get closer into it. But it's unfurling what are the assumptions that I can detect when I listen to the pattern of someone's speech. And if any of you are analysing the sentences, anyone you've heard speaking today, they're just riddled, they're just packed with presuppositions. And that's a bit of the pedanticism we're going to get into a little with good purpose, just to understand what's in this knitting pattern.
And again, just to reiterate, for some of you, the penny will drop in the next 20 minutes or so. For some of you, it might be tomorrow. For some of you, it might be, in a week's time. So that was a sentence packed with presuppositions, by the way.
And you'll very easily, either now or in a few days' time, be able to pick these up so easily and efficiently. And the use is, it's very clever way of bringing someone along with you, influencing them, putting suggestions in, and you're doing them with good intent to help the client achieve their outcome better and more efficiently. Presuppositions allow us to sort of bypass resistance where there has been a stuckness in a client. We're able to presuppose movement, moving forward, progression in the way we talk and feed back to a client that allows them to get past and over that hurdle. And you're really only, as we work through, you'll get the gist of how this works and how this happens. And as Kevin said, you'll be doing it all the time anyway, maybe not consciously. And as you learn the patterns more, you'll be able to apply them with meaningful effect.
So we sent you some bits of information this morning. So if you've got those to hand, that would be quite useful. We'll put them on the screen as well. So there's a list of presupposition types and then some examples which we're going to work through. All right, we are going to put them on the screen as well. We'll go through the types and the examples, and then we're going to get you to pair up and do some activity. And then you can take a little break in there if you need one in the middle of that activity, just in case you're wondering when that's coming.
Kevin, is it useful just to share that one slide that's got that very simple example of a statement that then we on? So I'll just pop that up now that I'm getting a little bit more adept at that, I hope, or not, as I see you're looking at my thumbnails. There we go. Is everyone looking at that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the simple, direct, straightforward question one might ask, do you understand what presuppositions are? Then we can start layering in other presuppositions. Do you understand what presuppositions are yet? Another level there might be when you understand what presuppositions are, you'll be able to use them. And then the final one there, when you understand what presuppositions are, you'll be able to use them easily and effortlessly.
So even in that first one, let's just sort of draw this out for a second. There is a number of things, there are a number of presuppositions even in that first sentence. So one presupposition is there are things called presuppositions. Yeah. The second one is it is possible for people to understand what presuppositions are. And there's a third one in there, which is it's probably possible for you to understand what presuppositions are as well, or that's what I'm presupposing. Is everybody with that? So even in a very straightforward sentence, when we unpack it and unpick it, we find there are some presuppositions. And this is the thing, if we accept the sentence, you know, whether we answer yes or no to that question doesn't matter. But if we accept the sentence, we accept the presuppositions that are in it. So the next one, for example, do you understand what presuppositions are yet? So there's an extra presupposition in there that it's almost presupposing that you will at some point. Okay. The next one then is when you understand what they are, you will be able to use them. So there's another presupposition in that statement as well. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking at. So let's look at the different types first of all. If we share that slide, Reet, with the presupposition types, and we'll just run quickly through them.
Okay.
So we've got 10 types here.
Very soon. Oh, that didn't work. I'll do it this way. Sorry about that.
All right, okay.
You're going to get the job back, I can tell, Kevin.
Right. So the first one then is existence. So in every sentence, there is some evidence of something existing. All right. The second one is that what we call possibility. Sometimes in a sentence, there's an indication that something is possible. Yeah. Next two, really important in NLP terms, which we'll look at when we come to the meta model in a bit more detail. Cause and effect, we've probably come across this already as a frame anyway. Cause and effect is the idea that A causes B. Remember, this is in the person's mind. Whether you think it does or not doesn't matter. It's what is in the person's mind. For them, A is definitely a cause of B. All right. Complex equivalence is similar but different. So complex equivalence is A means B. Yeah, so cause and effect, A causes B. Complex equivalence, A means B. Yeah. For example, you know, the fact that Rita didn't buy me flowers means that she doesn't care for me anymore. Yeah. Don't know where that came from.
You were just using the opportunity, were you, to remind me?
Okay, next one is awareness, so that something can be seen, heard, felt, known, or realized. Yeah, you'll see how these come to play when we work through some examples. Yeah. Okay, next one.
Okay.
Time. Something in the sentence is giving us some idea that time is part of the dialogue here. So, you know, starting, finishing, yet, stop, whatever the language is, there's some clues referencing time. Yeah. Adverb, adjective, straightforward grammatical stuff, provides more information. And then we have the two ors. Now, the exclusive one is, you know, you can have X or Y, A or B. Yeah, you can't have them both in the structure of the language in the exclusive or. You have to have one or t'other. But the inclusive or is something needs to happen. So A needs to happen, or B can't happen. Or A, if A happens, B will happen. Yeah. So two different kinds of or there. You'll get used to those if you've not quite got your head around them yet. And then the final one is what we call ordinal, and there's some indication of an order or a pattern or a process. So, you know, you do this first, and then you do this, and then you do this. So this is the first one, the second one, the third one. Okay, so some kind of order has been identified in the sentence. Yeah. So we're going to work through a couple of examples now, and then we're going to get you to do this in pairs, and you can come up with your own examples as well. So let's put our examples up.
I will share again, Kevin. I was just wanting to see everyone's faces and just check with us, and they could recite.
He was going, yes, more detail.
They could recite the 10 to us without thinking about it. Okay, I'm going back to sharing screen now. I've seen their lovely faces. Okay, here we go.
So if we look at the first one, then we said John left his house. Not our John, could be any John.
I'm actually on holiday, so it's true.
I wondered why you were in the bedroom this time.
And why you've gone mute.
So if we take a simple statement like John left the house, the two things that I can spot immediately there is existence of John and existence of something called house. Yeah. What else have we got there? You might say that there is an existence of time.
Because he's left.
Yeah, because there is a presupposition that at one time John was in the house and now he's left the house. So there has to have been some time elapsed for that to have happened.
And the existence of a house that in some ways related to him could be his home. It's his house. Good point.
Good point. Yeah, yeah. The other one I can see is an order. So the order is that John was in the house. I mean, we're making an assumption that he was in the house. It could be something else, but let's say that he was in the house, and then the second phase was he's not in the house. So there's an order to those events. Yeah. All right. Let's have a look at the next one. He could have walked down to the lake. So we've already established that there is a John. So there is an existence of lake here. There is sorry?
He could walk, a capability of
there is John, the existence of John being able to walk. There is a possibility that he could have walked to the lake. And interestingly, if there is a possibility that he could have done something, there is a possibility then that he could do something else. So keep that in mind, because that's quite important and not immediately obvious. but in any possibility, if there's a possibility of one thing, there's the possibility of the thing, of the thing that's not the thing. There's a good one.
So it's like could also has could not do it, might has might not do it. So where you're expressing the possibility of doing something, there's also the possibility of doing something else, or at least not doing that thing.
Yeah, okay. So because it was sunny, he decided to climb the mountain at the back of his house. Okay. So there is an implied cause and effect there, that because it was sunny, that caused him to decide to climb the mountain at the back of the house. Yeah. Now, there's also an awareness, an existence of the sun, and there's also an awareness that John can and has become aware that it is sunny. Yeah. There's a possibility of climbing the mountain. We're not clear whether he's climbed the mountain yet, but he said he's decided to climb the mountain at the back of the house. So there's a possibility of climbing the mountain. There is therefore a possibility of not climbing the mountain. Yeah. What else have we got in there? There's a possibility of the house. Sorry, there is an existence of the house. There is an existence of the mountain. There is an existence of the back of the house. Okay.
It sounds like there's a time or something in there, because he decided seems to be something that would take a time lapse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's an order in that one has to decide to climb the mountain at some level before one climbs the mountain.
Yeah, so that was the first sort of step sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just do one more. Being on top of the mountain, so there is the existence of the top of the mountain. There is a possibility that, it's possible to get to the top of the mountain, and therefore there is a possibility that other people may be able to get to the top of the mountain as well. There is a complex equivalence in this person's mind, because they're saying it was the being on top of the mountain that gave him the same sense of clarity. So he's making an association there between being on top of the mountain and having this sense of clarity. Yeah. Whether that's in any way, shape or form factual, whatever that might mean, the important thing is that that's what's in the person's map of the world. Yeah.
He's at least 2 years old.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. There is a possibility of him having that sense of clarity again. He's had that sense of clarity before. Yeah. Okay. Let's let you have a go now. So I think if we do this in pairs, Reet, yeah?
Yeah, I think Joe's got her hand up.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
It would be really useful if you would give us the time off to go and, well, me, the time off to go out and print out your handout of presupposition types, so that I'd have it with me and I could scribble on it when we're doing the exercise. So could we use the break?
Yeah, sure.
To do that.
When you go off in your pairs, Joe, print it then. Yeah.
Thank
you.
Now,
how many pairs are we going to have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ones of 3.
6. So we're going to have 6. What I was going to suggest is that how many pairs are we going to have? 6, did you say?
6, but one's and of 3.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah.
5
so
and of 3.
If the first 3 could start at number 5 and work upwards, we're going to give you 10 minutes on this. And if
three
this
rooms, you're
group of
saying.
3 could start at number 9 and work down.
Okay, so just to confirm, you'll find out what room you're in, but rooms number 1, 2 and 3 start at number
5
and work downwards, and room 4 and 5 start at the bottom and work up, however far you get in the 10 minutes we're going to give people.
Yeah.
And you will also have time in that time, if you can make your time to print out and go to the loo.
I was meaning, could we have the break first? Could we have the tea break first?
You're making all.
We haven't time, Joe,
okay.
All in your 3 or 2. Just let's do it now, sort of thing. And I'll set up the rooms now. If anyone has any other pressing questions, just stay here and ask us. Otherwise, you're all going to be invited into your rooms now. And you may want to have a wee break, print your things out, and then get your head around this really exciting stuff that's going to prove so useful to you.
Can I just ask a question, please?
Of course.
Yeah.
What you talked about, do you understand what presuppositions are, and that there were 3 presuppositions in that statement? And
Yeah.
the first one was existence.
Yeah.
The second one was possibility. What was the third one?
Let me just see if I can find that again, Kath. Can you put it up on screen, right? If you find it first.
Yep. If I find it first, I certainly will. I think I've just done that. Let's have a look. Go back to this one here, Kath. Oh, I'm not sharing. That didn't help you at all whatsoever. Okay, I was assuming you could see. Right.
So which one, Kath? Which one?
So you broke down that top question. You said the presuppositions in there. There are things called presuppositions. So that's existence, isn't it?
Yes. Yep.
The second one was that you can understand presuppositions. So that's possibility, is it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And then the third one I didn't catch. It was that you will, and therefore I thought that might be awareness.
Or existence of the you. Did we already have that?
Well, there's an existence of you, certainly. Yeah.
So it was 2 existences then.
Well, and the possibility one as well. Is there a third in there? I'm just looking at it now.
You just said that there was 3 presuppositions, and then you followed it up with the categories, and I was just trying to map them into that. And I couldn't do it.
I think there's a definite third in the second one, Kath, which is
time.
There's a time factor in there.
The can understand, so that has the time.
Yeah, and there is possibly a fourth one as well, in that you are presupposing that they will understand at some point. That might be being presupposed in that statement. Does that make sense, that one?
I think so.
I mean, if I say to you, are you understanding this yet, Kath? Yeah.
And I say no, there's a concept that I might do at some future time, understand it.
That's it. Yeah.
I believe you. Thousands wouldn't.
Thank you. We'll ask you again later.
Yeah.
Enjoy, play with it. And it's just Joe.
I stop recording now, or pause recording. Pause or stop? Pause.
Did you stop or pause?
What do you want?
Pause.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. So let's just work through a couple of examples, just so that we can see that we're all on the right track with this. We'll probably give you a couple of examples to do in the online as well. So let's look at number 5. Anybody have some offering on number 5? Those who were working on that one.
Can you show us that on screen, Kevin?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Looking for them. Presupposition examples. I've got them, Kevin, I think, if you have
them.
Them,
So as he walked up the mountain, he saw the valley disappear below and felt a strong sense of freedom, knowing that the rest of the day was his own.
So there was awareness in this one.
Yeah, awareness in terms of...
He felt a strong sense of freedom.
Yeah, very good. Oh, yeah.
There's existence in this one.
Yeah, existence of...
Well, the fact that there was a mountain and there's a he.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. What else?
Time. There's time in the rest.
Time. Yeah.
Zone.
Yeah, you know, the rest of the day. So there's obviously the concept of a day in there. Yeah.
And ordinal in a way, because he walked up and then the rest of the day. But I can't imagine when there would be a time and not an ordinal, because almost time is ordinal.
Yeah. You might just be talking about a future event, I suppose, exclusively. And therefore that's time, but there might not be an obvious order. This happened and then that happened and then that happened. So I think it's possible, but maybe unlikely. Anything else?
Kevin, sorry, what about the other way around? Can you have an ordinal without time?
Yes, you could have a ranking of values, for example. Yeah.
Of importance, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Got cause and effect in there.
Okay, what's the cause and effect?
Saw the valley disappear below and felt a strong sense of freedom.
Yeah, or it could be that he felt a strong sense of freedom because he knew that the rest of the day was his own. That might be the implied relationship there. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Let's have a look at number 9 then. Those of you who are working on this one. So he packed up his things, popped his rucksack on his back, went down the mountain, and arrived at his house just as Susan drove up.
There's lots of existence there.
Yeah.
He's got things. He's got a rucksack. There's a mountain. His house. Yeah. He's got some sort of relationship with someone called Susan.
Maybe there's a relationship, but yeah.
And there's someone called Susan.
There's someone called Susan. Yeah.
And there's a car, or a van, or a bus, or a vehicle,
or a four in hand. If he's a carriage driver.
Does it mention a vehicle at all?
Yes, drove
up. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was looking
sort of mechanism.
I was looking at the John part of the statement there. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, what else have we got?
Time.
So we've got possibility as well. Number 2, possibility, which refers to the fact that it was possible for him to go back down the mountain and arrive at his house.
Yeah, and therefore possible for him not to go down the mountain as well. Yeah.
Possible for Susan to drive.
Or not.
Yeah, good.
Good or not, yeah.
Possible for him to carry his rucksack.
Yeah.
Possible for him to pack his things into it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
There's a sequence there, isn't there, of the order in which he did things, and
absolutely.
Yeah. Popped says more about the way that he did that than necessary, because it gives the impression of a lighter rucksack, perhaps because he's eaten his lunch.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah.
He didn't really eat his lunch at that point.
Yeah, didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Let's have a look at final one then. Have we time for one more, Rita, or do we need to move on?
You can do it really quickly.
Let's have a look at number 7. Did anybody have a look at number 7?
No.
Yeah, we had a quick look at 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
What do we have? We're obviously sort of existence ones again about the paths. We had, I think, the most interesting. What do we have on there? We had ones about exclusive or. They could take the left or the right path.
Yeah.
There's one about awareness, because he knew he could take either path.
Yeah.
And there's one about I'm not quite sure where this falls in actually. So it's been good, interesting question. He's obviously done it before, because it says this time he chose the right path.
Okay. Yeah.
So I wasn't quite sure what sort of presupposition that was necessarily.
Well, there's time in there, isn't there?
Yeah, and a previous trip, I suppose.
Yeah, and you could say an order there as well, because there was one time when he did this, at least one time, and then this is the second time, so there's an order.
How about the existence of a memory?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can anybody spot the complex equivalence?
Yeah, I think I was going to say that I think there's an assumption there that the right path is a extra challenging one. Therefore, the left path is not so challenging. Is that right?
Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. That's good. Yeah. And adverbs and adjectives as well in there. Fantastic. Great. Now, I think it's fairly easy to understand when you get your head around it, but this is one of those things that when you become it's a little bit like the things that we've done on rapport, for example. When you become aware of these things, you can't then help but notice them. So for a while, you're going to be listening to people's language in every day, and you're going to be noticing certain things and certain presuppositions. And there can be a little bit of a tendency to become a little bit pedantic. So please be kind to those who you live with, those who you are communicating with. It's almost like, to some extent, it reminds me of John and his magic circle stuff. That when somebody says a sentence, it's like they're presenting you with a trick. When you are aware of this idea that it's packed with presuppositions, it's like somebody's explaining the trick to you. And what happens unconsciously all the time is, somebody will say something, and the fact that you accept the sentence, even though you're disagreeing with some elements of it, you are accepting and buying in to the presuppositions within the sentence. Yeah. So, as you work through this, it will become more obvious as to how you can use this as a coach. Because remember, when you're working with somebody, they're talking mostly from their surface structure, their language map, and it's packed with all of these presuppositions. So one thing for you to do as an NLP coach is to spot what these presuppositions are, and if appropriate, challenge them. Yeah, and that's what we're going to do a lot more of when we come back to the meta model as well.
Just to say on the magic thing, our temptation is to be like a magician who's just learned a new trick and wants to show everybody, and that's really irritating.
Yes.
Only use it when you're supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
Wise advice. Thank you, John. Okay, so now if you'd like to breathe in again and breathe out slowly and just leave a little new space as we move on to our next topic, which is framing and reframing. It's a topic you should be familiar with already. One of the very first modules we shared with you, we shared some useful NLP frames, and we discussed them, and there were things like the ecological frame, feedback frame, as if frame, and a number of others. And the concept behind framing is really that what we're all doing is making sense of the world for ourselves, making meaning out of what we're experiencing. The meaning we make is determined by the way we frame things. So I've just got a few slides just to, in case you weren't aware, just to point out the difference different frames can make. Bit of fun really to share with you. I'll just show one, there's a few others, but let me just get so I can share screen again. So Is that working for you? Is there a little image in the middle of a screen there?
Yes.
And so the idea about frames is just that however you frame something, you're just seeing potentially part of what's happening. You're seeing it from a different perspective. You're seeing it through different filters. And how that frame sits will determine what you see. And this is a particularly bizarre image from a holiday that I had. Kevin showed you some of his photos. So here's another one. What an extraordinary image it was in the first place. But when you only saw part of it, you could probably never have imagined what was going to be in the whole of it then. And that's what we have when clients are presenting us with their story or part of their story, how they're seeing things, the perspective they're using. And that's what we want to be attuned to as well. Noticing how something is framed, and if that framing isn't being useful for the client and their particular outcome at the time, helping them consider alternative frames so things can be different. So it's really framing and reframing is the process of reinterpreting, of taking a different viewpoint. And in NLP, there's two particular ways that are described for doing that. One of them is the meaning, changing the meaning. So someone comes to you and presents something and their meaning isn't serving them well at that time in that instance. And the other is looking at the context in which something is happening and changing that context to broaden the perspective again of the client in seeing what their situation is.
What's been interesting for us in the last week or so, I mean, this is a topic that you know we've known for some time and worked with in the past, but we've kind of revisited it and asked ourselves some questions about it, and we've come up with a different way of representing it, which we think will work really well for you. So let's have a look at the meaning one first, Street. Have you got the slide on that one?
I will shortly.
We like a diagram. We like a model.
And I think was it Joe who particularly likes imagery, so we keep Joe in mind when we do these. There we go. This one here. Is that there for you, Kev?
Yeah. Okay. So the idea behind the meaning reframe, that there is a presupposition here that every behavior has a positive intent, and the client is focusing on a particular behavior having a negative impact, if you like. And one of the things that we want you to do as a coach is to draw their attention. This is a little bit like the GROW model in that, you know, when we ask them to generate options, what we're saying to them here is, okay, we know that you are making an association, if you like, a complex equivalence, which we've just looked at, between a behavior or an event, and you're equating that to a particular meaning, and that is not useful for you. Yeah. So what we're wanting them to do is to, by asking a simple question like, what else could it mean? And we're hoping that when you have rapport with the person and you do it with a smile and a light touch, that they will then come up with what else that behavior or that event could potentially mean. Let's illustrate this with an example. So Rita, let's you and I have a little chat. Actually, we haven't had much of a catch up since the weekend, really, have we?
No, I don't think we have.
So so the weekend, I had my daughter and my little granddaughter, who's 5-year-old, and they have a dog who's a lovely little dog. But the blooming house, I'm not going to turn my camera around now because it's a complete mess. You know, there's blooming stuff all over, and it's a good job my cleaner's coming this afternoon, actually.
Aww. And Kevin, when you think about that and that mess and everything else, I wonder what would it be like what would it mean if that mess wasn't there? If it was all pristine and there wasn't a mark or a sign on the carpet, what would it mean to you?
Yeah, Yeah, that would be kind of empty, I guess, really. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it shows that I've had some company here this weekend, and it's been great, and we've had some fun, and who cares if the house is a little bit messed up? It can be put back together. Yeah. What's most important is I've had the little granddaughter here at the weekend and my daughter, so that's been great.
Excellent.
So that's simply what we've illustrated there. Is it's the same event in the same context. We haven't changed the context, but Rita's asked me to explore what else could that mean. What else could the dirty marks on the floor, he says, looking over, what else could the marks on the floor mean other than having an irritation from having a house that's not pristine or whatever. Yeah, so just pop that one back up just to clarify that one, Rita. So that's the meaning reframe. So the behavior, the event happens in a context. We're not changing the context. We're getting the person to explore alternative meanings. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll just shoot through the others to this one, Kev. So the other way of reframing is this context reframe. So we're looking at the behavior in a particular context, this context one, and in this instance, the client or person is making a meaning of it that's not useful, this behavior in this context. So what we do on this instance is invite them to change the context in which that behavior might be useful. So it's building on that NLP proposition that every behavior has some utility in some context. So where a person might be describing behavior as awful, useless, problematic, we're saying, okay, well, when might that behavior be useful? What different context might it be useful in? And I'll invite the client to explore that so that they're loosening up their belief and their sense of knowing about what that behavior or event means that might have been stuck as useless, not worthwhile at all. We're sort of shaking it up a bit and causing some disturbance around it by reminding them and getting them to explore when might that behavior be useful. And again, what we're wanting to do is increase people's flexibility to realize that that behavior is useful, and there will be other behaviors that are more useful in that context one, but not to throw the baby out with bathwater and say everything about that behavior is useless. So
Rita, what I'm just going to suggest here, let just leave that one up for a second, and I'll just read out 2 or 3 examples, and then we'll go back to the meaning reframe, because I think that's the easier one to get your head around.
Okay.
For example, if I was to make a statement that said, looking out on this rain makes me miserable. Yeah.
So we might invite
just before we reframe that, the behavior, the event is, if you like, it's raining. That's all that's happening. And I'm looking out on it. We could do all the presupposition stuff on that, of course, but it's raining. That's basically the whole of the event. Now, I'm making a meaning from that, which, if you like, is a complex equivalence, that the rain means I must feel miserable, or I am feeling miserable. Yeah. So what we can do now is we can change the context.
Simply by inviting Kevin to think of a time, a different context, a different place where that rain might be considered useful, beneficial. Can you think of any time where rain is something that's useful, that behavior of rain?
It's interesting. What's just come to mind here is, you know, actually, Rita, when you and I were in Malaysia, and it was that unbelievable torrential rain, the like of which I've never seen before. It was just amazing. Stood at the window watching it, and it made me feel very happy, actually.
Wow. Well, that's a good one to bring to mind then the next day it's raining here, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay, let's do another one. I just hate that feeling of frustration. So, you know, there is a feeling that I'm noticing, which I'm labeling as frustration. And the meaning I'm making of it is that I always hate. In other words, I'm saying that, you know, I'm saying it's not useful, but I'm actually saying something stronger than that. I really hate that feeling of frustration. Yeah.
And are there occasions, Kevin, where that frustration serves you well in a different context, in a different time, where actually having that frustration has helped you in some way?
Yeah, I guess if I think about it, there are times when I've been frustrated in it, and it's led me to take some action or some decision. Yeah, when I think about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do one more. It's terrible that my son's mind is wandering all the time. So the event is the son's mind, let's think about a school context, I guess, is just wandering all the time. And what I'm deducing from that is a terrible thing. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'd imagine would be a terrible thing if one of my family just had a mind that was stuck and jammed. Anyway, what context do you think it'd be really useful? Is there another occasion where you think that really serves him well? That your son's able to do things he might not have been able to do if he didn't have such a creative and exploring and curious mind?
He seems quite creative, and he does seem to be able to sort of think outside the box, I guess. Yeah.
So there's sometimes in some places where that's useful, and sometimes that it's not serving him so well. So maybe we could look at, in that context, what we could do to help him to maybe focus more. But what we've hopefully been able to do is shift Kevin's perception of that in itself being useless, the wandering mind being a useless behavior. And yet, of course, it has utility in another context. And once we've loosened that up, what we generally find is that the client's more available, more open to explore what else they can do. And the sun or the rain, you know, that behavior can continue. And we can consider what alternative behaviors are useful in the particular context for a particular outcome that's required without dissing that behavior.
And just a couple of things to remind ourselves here, that idea of behavior or event and meaning is in the person's map. It's not in any kind of reality. They might say it's reality, but that link is being made, that complex equivalence or cause and effect, whatever it might be, that link is being made in their map. And you know, if that link is useful, fantastic. But probably the reason that they're telling you about it is that that link is not useful, but you know, maybe they're not aware of it, or maybe they don't know how to get out of it. So you can gently explore with them how they could break that link or create other alternative links in their map. Yeah. And the final thing to say on that one, I think, is notice what we're doing there with the context shift. It's the where else, who else, or when else. So it's the same thing, but shifting what we call the context with those three questions. Yeah. Let's go back to the meaning one now.
Okay. Were you going to invite some of the group to
Yeah, let's do a couple of examples, and then we'll ask the group to chip in. So, all right, so I'll state something which is either a behavior or an event, and I'm ascribing a meaning to it. What we want you to do then is to get me to explore what else could it mean. Yeah. So, for example, if I'm saying something like, you know, my application must have been really terrible because I didn't even get an interview. Yeah. So so the event is what's happened is I didn't get an interview.
Mm-hmm.
The meaning I'm making is it was because of my application. So the idea here is to explore, you know, so Reet, what would you?
Oh, I'd simply ask, as is stated up there, what else could not getting an interview mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That is certainly one option. And what else could it mean? And then after you come up with that, I might ask you, and what else might it mean?
Yeah, yeah. And notice what's happening, and we'll come back to this later in the program as well. This is a belief. Yeah, it's a belief that I have constructed in my map that one is meaning the other. What we are looking to do here, and this is a great technique for us as coaches, is to loosen up the belief. Because what happens is, if I say, you know, my belief that I don't know, the sky is grey, and if you say to me, no, it isn't, it's pink, you know, that doesn't work. Generally, just saying to somebody, you're wrong, here's the right answer, particularly if it's a sort of deep-seated belief. So what we're looking to do with this process is to loosen up and offer alternatives. Yeah. Okay, let's take one more. He doesn't spend any time with me, so clearly he doesn't value me anymore. Can anybody else want to come in on that one? How could you reframe that one? He doesn't spend any time with me, so that means he clearly doesn't value me anymore.
Would it be appropriate to ask, but what else is going on for him?
Kind of, yeah. I think that's what we're looking for, Joe, is to say, what else could the fact that this person isn't spending time with you mean? Which I think is the same kind of thing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's more what you said is a more general, open question than what I offered. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we're both kind of along the same lines there. Yeah.
I think what's interesting about having the what else could it mean is the explicit drawing to mind for the client that they are making a meaning out, you know. So I think, Joe, I think your question would work as well.
Yeah.
But it's part of the presupposition is here, you have made a meeting and there are others.
That's a really good point. Just going back to our bit on presuppositions. In your question as a coach, you are presupposing, depending on how you phrase it, that they are making a meaning, that the event and meaning are separate. That's one presupposition. You could presuppose to them very clearly that they are making the meaning, yeah? And you are then presupposing there are other possible meanings. Yeah, so you're packing in presuppositions into your question. And anybody else with that one? Let's take another one. Finally, just to finish off. Still having things to do on my to-do list means I have to work this weekend. Might be familiar to some of you, that one. So what's the event?
Why else? Why else? I mean, why else could you have things on your to-do list?
Yeah, Yes, just caveat, John, avoid the why question, because that can get people to be quite defensive.
Okay. What else could having things on your to-do list mean?
That's it. Yeah, which is the why question, but we're not using the word why. What else could it mean? Yeah. Excellent. So the event is, there are things on my to-do list. The meaning I'm making from that is I have to work at the weekend. Yeah. And you know, that doesn't have to be the case, of course. Yeah.
And of course, we'll cover other challenges to that in later sessions as well. So here we are at 12:24, inviting you to ask us any questions for further understanding that you need at this moment, that you would like, that would really help settle things for you. Or I'll leave you in anticipation of something else. I've got one lovely paragraph I'm going to share with you shortly. Okay, thank you very much for engaging. It was a lot perhaps for some of you, and not a lot for others of you in terms of using your brain power, the grey matter being stimulated, a real utilisation of our conscious minds in our activity today, I believe. We will, of course, have a consolidation going up, and we have got some more background information. And like Kevin said, there'll just be a couple of things we'll ask you to explore, to examples for you to pull out, just to embed this learning. But be kind and gentle to yourself, because these are things that are very natural to us. We are using all the time. All we've done is put the spotlight and raised awareness if it's something you're not familiar with, you hadn't been familiar with. We've also will be inviting you to, and I do hope you take up the invitation, to have a chat with one or other of us on the week of the 3rd of May. And then just before we wave and say goodbye, could I just read you this lovely, I should have pretended I was doing it off the cuff. So pretend for you, use your marvelous imaginations and pretend you're just listening. So if you begin to ponder just how many presupposition forms have already been in this sentence, I wonder if you know whether your curiosity will easily stimulate you to continue learning useful language patterns consciously, or whether you will be fortunate enough to discover that your unconscious mind has learnt so much that soon you'll be back with a sense of delightful surprise at how much you already know. So leaving you with all those embedded presuppositions about how marvellous and brilliantly you've learned new stuff today, I will invite you to just wave so that we can take a lovely screenshot to put at the front of the thing, and wish you very, very well. And you know where we are if you need to chat any more to us. Okay.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
It was a bit off-piste, so I didn't think it was quite right for the group.
Okay, let me just stop recording then.
Okay.
Yep.